Yo, this is Alex Mouth for Destiny, and today I have the great pleasure of speaking to Tyler Yeager Powerlifter. Now, for those you don't know, he's a very strong drug-free lifter, and you can follow his progress on YouTube. I would encourage you to subscribe to him after watching this interview. And today we're going to talk about all kinds of various subjects regarding strength training, powerlifting, all kinds of beautiful things. So, Tyler, welcome aboard.
Thanks a lot, man. Glad to be here.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you on. So before we get started, I want to first, can you introduce yourself to the viewers, kind of explain what your background is, and start off by mentioning your total and some of your best lifts?
Yeah, so I started powerlifting when I was about 14 years old. I started just the gym bro stuff, like bench press and stuff like that. And then I got more deep into it when I was 19. I started competing. And my best total to date, I actually did after my bicep surgery. I did it about 8 months after that. I did a 1466 raw total with just a belt. And to break that down, it was a 540-pound squat, a 342-pound bench press, and a 584-pound deadlift.
Mm.
And you went to gym lifts as well? Or?
Yeah. People always love to hear gym lifts.
All right. Gym lifts, this is before bicep surgery. I did a 565-pound raw squat, a 370-pound touch-and-go bench press, and a 665-pound deadlift.
Yeah, so those are insane numbers, man. And what I like about it, too, is that you did it drug-free, you know? There's a lot of powerlifters that are on some stuff, and that's not taking anything away from them. Obviously, they're very dedicated and strong athletes, and they know what they're doing. But I find it really cool that you're pushing the natural limit, you know? And you're really putting up some insane numbers. Like that deadlift is very impressive, as well as the bench. And I mean, everything's impressive. So can you talk a bit about what type of programming you use to get these type of numbers? Like, do you follow more so of a conjugate type system, classic linear periodization? How exactly do you like to train?
See, I've always liked to do linear periodization. I just like seeing every week the weight and the barbell go up. But of course, your intensity is going to go up, your volume is going to go down as the weeks go on. But more recently, I want to say the past, like I trained with Brandon Lilly. I started squatting 3 days a week and stuff. And that was a little bit intense for me. I got some patellar tendonitis and some chest pain and stuff. So I started doing my own thing with the linear periodization. But I also, towards the end, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before I do a mock meet or a powerlifting meet, I'm starting to implement some conjugate training into my training as well.
Okay, like speed benching and things of that nature?
Yeah, like I'll mix it up. Like 1 week I'll do like a max effort close grip bench press, and next week I'll do a max effort incline, max effort close grip with a pause. Just
yeah. And you do this while you're peaking or while you're just building strength throughout the year?
Kind of both. Kind of both. More so when I'm peaking. It's more so towards the end weeks before I do my powerlifting meet. But when I like to throw some odd things in there too, like, trap bar deadlift, some high rack pulls and stuff.
Well, I've seen your numbers on both of these exercises, and it blew my mind because when I first released my 700 trap bar, I think it was a week later or something, you released the same thing, but you're doing it for reps without straps, and I was like, damn, man, you put me to shame right there. And even the rack pulls, like, you're lifting the same amount as me, but you're doing it without freaking straps, which is mind-boggling, and I think it must be the heaviest rack pull on the freaking internet, Actually, what is that rack pull? What is the number that you did barehanded? So the viewers know.
Rack pull, I most recently did a 1145-pound barehanded rack pull, but it kind of slipped out. I'm on the one side.
Yeah.
But the one I was more notorious for that you actually gave me a shout out for is the 1125. But I've also done a 1205 too, but I barely left the racks.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I'm not about that, but yeah.
Well, actually, now that we're talking about rack pulls, I'd like to hear your take on grip strength and development. I know you made a video discussing it, but how did you get such an elite grip? Because it doesn't even make logical sense how you can acquire such strength. I mean, as a drug-free lifter, and it's just amazing. So what did you do to reach that level of grip strength?
Yeah, so I was around a 500-pound deadlift or so. And people were telling me that I could use rack pulls to help increase my deadlift. Because at the time, I'd consider myself more of a novice. So,
what do you mean?
Yeah.
A novice, like in terms of powerlifting or what?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of powerlifting, especially for nowadays, too.
Really?
And not only that, but I go by how long you've been training as well.
Okay.
So, in the powerlifting game, I was only training for about a year or so. and I was at about 500-pound deadlift, and I was kind of stuck there for a little bit. And people were telling me, hey, man, start doing rack pulls. It'll definitely increase your strength. So I started with the low rack pull, training with about 405 or so.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is pretty cool. So I started increasing the height to see what I could do. And then I found okay, let's try to increase our grip strength and stuff like that. Because my grip wasn't always very strong. Like, I was starting to almost lose it on 500-pound deadlifts.
Right.
So I started doing holds in the rack for time. I'd do that. And I started to see that my grip was really taking off. Like, my first time ever, I did, I think, a 405 rack pull, just super high rack pull, and just held it for, I want to say, about 30 seconds or so. And I just kept on improving on that. And then I just tested it the one time, and I did a 850-pound barehanded rack pull. Okay, let's try to get to 1,000. So I kept on using that method of holding the weight as long as I could. And if I could tolerate it, I would do more than one set. But
yeah, it's very taxing on the recovery and everything, for sure.
Yeah, one set's going to take a lot out of you. So I work, like, I do like 500 pounds, hold it for 30 seconds in, and then, 2 or 3 weeks later, I come in, try to hold it for 45 seconds till I get a minute.
Right.
Then I'd increase.
So you started at like the complete bottom, basically, at a low rack position using a low weight, and you gradually worked up to the point where you're hitting these insane numbers. And it's interesting. You did like a progressive range of motion method, but for your grip, A lot of guys use it to improve their pulls and their bench, but you did it systematically so that you could raise your grip strength. And now I'm guessing you never have any problems, right? When you do pulls and it never slips out.
No, never.
Yeah, like
never.
It'd be impossible at that point, Even if you're using a really crappy bar. I'm sure it's like always on point, But like, would you say that the rack pulls was the main thing? Like, had you dropped it and just done some other stuff like pinch work and fat bar work, do you think you'd still have the same level of grip strength? Or is it really the rack pulls that you contribute to your development here?
I'd say rack pulls. I mean, I did mess around with some pinch grip training and stuff, but I personally think the stuff like that, and then, like you said, fat bar grip training is more pertaining to the size of your hands. I think the people with the bigger hands are definitely going to benefit more from that. And they might be able to pinch more, but they might not be able to hold more on a barbell. Right. Like, it doesn't directly translate like that.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that a lot, especially in the grip sport world. A lot of these guys are very tall, like 6'5", and they have huge hands. And when you make them grab like a hex dumbbell, for instance, they're grabbing the whole thing. Like, I see Brian Shaw hitting some serious numbers, and I can't lift it. I can't even grab it because my hand's so small. So I think you made a good point there that the circumference is, it means a lot. But you still use like fat bar training to raise your grip strength, or you just don't mess with it?
No, I don't really mess with it, just because my grip's at such an elite level now that I just use barbell. And plus, I tell people all the time that, like, if they're deadlifting or they're losing their grip on a deadlift, like, people say to bench press more often, squat more often. So why not with your grip training? Why not hold on to a barbell to improve grip strength?
Yeah.
But not saying that those other things can't help, because they definitely could. But I think that translates better. Indeed. Using a barbell.
Well, you mentioned how people have this idea that all you should do is one lift over and over again. Is that how you train? Well, I don't think that's how you train, but what are your thoughts on like super minimalist programming, where you're only doing squat, bench, dead, and you're playing around percentages? Like, did you ever experiment with that, and did it work for you? And like, what do you think is best for most lifters?
Well, of course, like, I would squat, bench, and deadlift for powerlifting, but I'd also do a ton of assistance work. That's what a lot of people don't see in these videos. Like, top powerlifters as well, you'll see them squat, bench, and dead a ton of weight, and that's all they post, but people ain't seeing all the work in the background that they do as well. But yeah, as far as like the minimalist training though, for a natural lifter anyway, I think that you need to get as much work in as possible in order to get better, especially once you get to a certain level. Like, that might work for, more beginners and stuff. Like, you're going to get better no matter what, but I just think that the more advanced you get, the more you're going to have to actually add into your training.
Okay. It's interesting you say that because, I've heard a lot of powerlifters debate against this. Some people say that as you become more advanced, you can start dropping the assistance and you become more specific. Others say that you need more variety because you've really mastered the basics to such an extent that you're not going to make progress on it. So I'm assuming you fall more in line of the second option, right?
Right, but exactly what you've talked about. Like, you're talking like the Andre Milanichevs and the Pete Rubishes. Of course, benefit more from more minimalist training, but people like us are naturals. They're more in a middle ground.
Hmm.
There aren't really like our strength levels aren't absolutely bizarre like theirs, but it's also not like
Right.
not good strength at least. So I think that's for people like us, that's the best ground to take. I think.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of recreational lifters can also like relate to us too, you know, because not all of us have the best leverages and titanium muscles in certain areas, and sometimes that little bit of assistance work can help. It could really prevent injuries and make you a lot stronger. Like I know yourself, you had to deal with a few injuries yourself, like one of them being the bicep tear. Do you think that this had to do with too many pulls and not enough like assistance moves, or was it overuse?
Well, you see, the funny thing with the bicep tear is I did that 2 days after I deadlifted 665 pounds.
Okay.
Literally 2 days later, and it was at work actually. I work in
Oh wow.
distribution.
Okay.
Yeah, I work in distribution, so I'm, using heavy equipment and moving pallets around in heavy cases. And I probably shouldn't have been stupid. I was, moving a pallet across the floor with my hands with a double underhand grip,
Okay.
and it just right off. So, I mean, I wouldn't really attribute that so much to the lifting. Some people are saying, oh, hey, well, you just lifted 2 days before that, you deadlifted, so that probably, played a factor in that, but I don't really think so. I
Okay.
just felt more strain on the bicep, but yeah, I see a lot of guys, like you say, they'll pull it. A lot of strongmen, actually, they'll pull it. They'll, do stone lifts or something that
Yeah. Yeah.
requires bicep strength, and but
Well, it's interesting because a lot of guys they end up getting hurt in the workplace or while they're gardening. Like it doesn't even happen in the actual weight room. Same thing for low back injuries. You'll have a guy who he picks up his kid and then he's snapped up, and now
yeah,
you know. But I think a lot of it too is overuse. People don't really listen to their bodies and they're going too heavy, too hard all the time, and they don't deload when it's appropriate. And what happens is that when they perform a different activity, it just the body breaks down. Like injuries accumulate over a long period of time, not just in one little sitting.
right.
But like what I find strange too is that like you're very strong at the rack pulls, and I would have figured that it would have strengthened the tendons more so that you can't rip it off. But it seems that like even as a natural guy, you're still at a risk if you use mixed grip pulls.
Yeah, you see, the one video you made recently, I don't know how many videos ago you made it, but it was a good point you brought up with the max effort training and with strengthening your tendons and stuff. I think that is a huge thing because a lot of guys that like to train light, like especially some Russian guys, that they'll train a lot around 60, 70% to really focus on their form. Then they'll go to max out, and I just don't think that you're giving your body or your muscles and tendons a lot of time to prepare for that.
Right.
And I think that guys, like you said, you're lifting, heavy so often, it actually could benefit you, I feel, with your
Yeah.
joints and stuff.
Yeah. I think that's yeah because a lot of guys who run Bulgarian they report the same thing. Like I got my man JJ Anderson and Eric Bugenhagen. They've been maxing out for like years on end, just straight every day, and they don't have problems. And I feel that a lot of people they pull the genetics card too often. But to me, it's more likely that if you're doing an activity really frequently, you're going to adapt to it. Like the old time strongman, they did a lot of singles. Like most of their training was singles, and we don't really hear too many injuries coming from these dudes. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, deadlifts, right? You mentioned before how you were doing a progressive range of motion to raise your grip strength. Have you ever experimented with progressive range of motion to build your pull off the floor?
Yeah, like I said, I tried it like a low rack pull, and I was increasing the range over time, but I didn't really see a huge carryover, to be honest with you. I just feel like the higher that you raise the bar, elevate it, the less of a
Right.
carryover there is in your pull because you're in a completely different position. Even when you have it just below the knee or maybe like a little bit higher to mid shin, it's still in a slightly different position when you go to start because you're going to go in the most advantageous position to lift the weight.
Hmm.
Because if you're pulling right off of the floor, you got to look at your hip position is probably going to be a little bit higher. Therefore, like when you go to do a rack pull, you might try to squat down a little bit lower, which is a little bit more unrealistic compared to an actual movement.
Right. Well, I've heard from Louis Simmons that if you're going to do overloads in the rack or off blocks, it shouldn't be about 10% more than your pull off the floor. This way, it's specific enough so that it's still going to have a really good degree of carryover. because I do agree, like especially if you're pulling the higher racks, it's not really going to do much for your pull, And I've seen a lot of guys, especially who run like my programming, they get a bigger rack pull, but their deadlift doesn't get really huge because they're not doing specific activities. But that said, though, okay, so you're not a fan of the racks necessarily, the higher racks, but what about deficits, like deficit pulling? Do you find that this is carried over to your regular deadlifts?
Oh, definitely, dude. I would say that and stiff leg deadlifts are probably the best exercises you could do to increase your deadlift.
Okay.
You're just lifting through a more range of motion. Like, even if you don't think so with the stiff leg deadlift, just the relation for your hips to the bar is just completely different. So I feel like you're pulling it a little bit further. And then also, like you said, deficit. But I'm not a huge fan of using a really high deficit, though. I like doing maybe like 1 or 2 inches.
Okay, so you've never done like 4-inch deficits and stuff like that?
I tried it once before, but I just feel like it once again it becomes completely different movement. To where, yeah, it might build a lot of lower back strength, but in terms of position with your hips and driving your hips into the bar, I just don't think it's a really good safe position.
Okay, so with you, it seems like you're trying to be as specific as possible, basically, like in every type of way. Even if an exercise is more difficult, the fact that it changes the positioning a little bit, maybe it's not going to carry over as well as just doing it over and over again, with slight little tweaks like the stiff leg, right?
Right. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do those things, but if you're looking to particularly raise your main lift, I think that those are the best things to do.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm not really against it, but I just don't feel like it has as much of a carryover, but it doesn't hurt to throw in your training.
Okay. So then what are your thoughts on speed pulls or doing deadlifts with bands and chains? I mean, it's the same movement pattern, except now the strength, the joint angles change, so that's a bit heavier at the top, lighter at the bottom. Do you find that this works for raising the raw deadlift especially well, or are there other alternatives that you find are better?
You see, when it comes to speed now, that's one thing a lot of guys are like, let's raise our explosiveness. It'll definitely raise our max. But I think it's more of a mental thing when it comes to the speed, because you're like, damn, that moved fast. So then it really ingrains in your mind that you could use a lot more weight than that. I even would do this sometimes, like the max effort. Like if I do come in and I'm just not feeling it, and I'll deadlift 500 pounds, it doesn't feel that good, and then I'll come in a few weeks later, deadlift 500, it moves easier.
Right.
Just the difference in the speed really, helps you mentally. But yeah, I think it's more of a mental aspect with the speed rather than actually, helping you out with lifting the heavy weight. But it's just more of a placebo, I feel.
Okay. What about people who use speed pulls to get volume in? Because, for example, if you do a 5 sets of 10 deadlift with some relatively heavy weights, that might put a lot of pressure on the lower back because of the fatigue, right? But if you break it up, so you're doing like a 10 by 3, you're still getting that same volume in, but it's low reps and everything's done faster. Have you ever experimented with stuff like that, or is your deadlift training primarily low volume?
Yeah, I've done that type of stuff. I'm not really a big fan of going over about 5 reps on a deadlift.
Oh, yeah, really? Okay.
Especially for a conventional puller. Now, sumo, it's a little bit different. It's not as taxing on your lower back, but if you're talking a traditional powerlifter that squats and deadlifts, I just think the deadlifts are way too straining on the lower back to do over 5 reps. Especially if you're going as heavy as possible to do that. Mm-hmm. So let's say you deadlift 500 for a set of 5, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to try to get 450 for 10. Like, I just think that if you're going to do that, maybe do one top set and that's it. I just think that it really drains you too much to do squats as well.
Right.
So, I am a fan of doing the sets, though. I like doing a lot of sets, though.
Like a lot of sets with low reps? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So then how would you, like when you built up to that 655, right? That's what it was?
655, yeah.
665. When you built up to that insane pull, how would you do it exactly? Like, what was it? Can you give me a standard template that you use? Like a 4-week template or something?
Yeah, so 4-week template. So, like I said, I like doing the linear progression for a lot of stuff. I really like seeing the weight on the bar move up every week, but like I said, I'll move the volume down a little bit. So week 1, I'll start off, like, we'll even do like an 8-week prep or something. So week 1, I'll start off really light with like 315 or so. Like you said, I'll do like 10 sets of 3 or something. Okay. Really weight moving fast, really focus on more on the form, more so in the first couple weeks. And then maybe by about week 4 or so, I'm working out with like 405 maybe, and maybe doing like 4 sets of 5 or something like that.
Right.
So I'm changing the rep ranges ever so slightly. And then, once I get to week 6, I'm moving weights more so in the 500-pound range. But I'm not really a big fan of lifting so close to your max when you're ready to max out. I do maybe like 90% or so, but I just think if you're lifting over that back-to-back weeks, it's definitely going to be too taxing.
Would you say this depends on the lift, though? Like, I know for a deadlift, I can see this happening. But would it also
Right.
be true for a squat and a bench?
I wouldn't say as much, no. I'd
Okay.
say it's more so deadlift.
More so a deadlift. Okay. So it seems to me like you're using linear periodization, right? But you're not having like ultra high reps in the equation. Because I remember I did an interview with Richard Hawthorne, and he said that he does a lot of 10 by 10, 8 sets of 8, and then he gradually reduces it to the point where he's doing the singles, But you seem to be doing like a more higher set, low rep type of approach, but you're still following that same system where it becomes more intense, closer to 1 rep max, right?
Yeah, I do love Richard Hawthorne. He's actually the guy who taught me how to actually deadlift the right way.
For real.
And I
Oh,
a
nice.
lot. Yeah, because I messaged him on his YouTube, actually, and I was like, he helped me out with my deadlift and stuff, so I sent him a video, and he helped me out with my position and stuff like that, and I just like him because he's so scientific, and he's very scientific, and he's so much like the muscle-mind connection. He's really into that, and once I tapped into that, I learned how to actually deadlift the right way. I was more of like a back puller rather than
Right.
using my glutes and stuff and hamstrings.
Mm-hmm.
But the main difference with that, though, is he's a touch-and-go deadlifter. When he does reps, you see him do that a lot, and that's a lot less draining than actually stopping and going. That's why, now if you're doing touch-and-go reps, sets of like 8 to 10 could be good, but I just think that if you're doing stop-and-go, about 5 reps is probably the best range to work around.
Right. And what do you think about people who say that touch and go deadlifts don't work and that you should just do like pausing every time? Do you agree with that, or do you think that it's misguided?
I think it's kind of misguided. I think it depends on your situation. I think that if you're struggling off of the floor, I think that you should probably be doing stop-and-go deadlifts just to practice getting the weight off the floor every time. But I think that if you're struggling at lockout, it's actually a good thing to do touch-and-go as well. Maybe even mix the two. But I think the touch-and-go, what it does is, like, let's say you could get 3 reps with, dead stop with a certain weight. You might be able to bang out 7 or 8 reps touch-and-go. So you're getting all that extra overload work at the lockout.
Yeah,
So,
it's actually that extreme though, because I've never done touch and go pulls. So like if you do a 3 rep max with the touch and go, you can get like 7.
yeah,
Wow.
you could. A lot of guys, you could even go back and some of Pete Rubish's videos actually, where he deadlifts 765, and he was talking, he did 6 or 7 reps with 765 touch and go when he used to train that way, and he's like, listen, I probably wouldn't even get a double with that weight.
Right.
So a lot of guys like him or George Lehman, like if he could get that weight up one time, he could get that weight up, 4 or 5 times with touch and go. But it depends. Once again, it depends how good you are at it. Like you could get better over time, but typically, even your first time, if you could get a triple, you could probably get at least 5 reps set.
Okay.
Go.
Right. And do you find that the touch and go hits your hamstrings a bit harder, and it forces you to push more with the glutes and maintain like a hollow type of body? Because I think that's what Richard said. Richard said that when you do the pulls, it forces you to be like in one position, whereas if you just reset at the floor every time, you also got to reset your technique.
Yeah, but also like it depends. Like some guys, when they go to do touch and go, they'll keep their hips super high, like they almost do a stiff leg deadlift every time. Like they'll also come back down with their hips, like they'll just bend their back over. But if you could keep your form in line, I think it could be a good thing.
Excellent. Okay. Before you mentioned that you used to be a back puller, and then you started incorporating correct form and technique, and you started using your glutes and hamstrings. So what exactly did you do to start pulling more with the back side, like the glutes and hamstrings? Now, what are some technique cues that you like to incorporate?
So the technique cues I see before, when I was more a back puller, I would just bend over to the bar with my knees.
Right.
But in order to engage your hamstrings and glutes, what you're going to do is you're more so going to sit back and have a more upright shin angle.
Mm-hmm.
This is really going to force it. I'd even tell people to, just for the mental cue, to go down and touch your toes like you're trying to stretch your hamstrings and just feel that stretch, and then go down to the barbell and try to emulate that exact stretch.
What about sitting back, though? Because if you just bend forward and you touch the bar like you're trying to touch your toes, and then when you pick it up, you might not be pulling back, so it might turn into a stiff leg. So are there some cues that you like for more so pulling the weight back?
Right. So even with that, too, it's shifting your hips back. I probably should have said that first. So bend down at the knees. When you go to bend over, you're going to just shift your hips back to bend over to go and grab the barbell.
Right.
And that's automatically going to put your lower body into the lift. And then you're going to, flex your lats and make sure you have like a neutral head position. Some guys like to up even, but I like to think chest high when I go down and touch the bar, because a lot of guys you'll see, they'll push off the floor and they won't be able to get past the mid shin because their back is too rounded over.
Right.
And too much of their body weight is shifted over to barbell. So I'd say chest high and bend at the hips.
Okay. You mentioned the lats. Do you think it's important to be like pulling the bar really close to you and having the elbows tucked and like really trying to actively engage your lats? Or do you feel that if you just sit back and pull with the glutes and hamstrings that everything's going to fall into place?
No, definitely with the lats. The main thing with the deadlift is balance. And you need to try to keep that bar as close as possible to your shins.
Right.
And then, engage in the lats and trying to actively even like pull the bar down, almost as if you're doing like a
pullover on the cable station? Yeah.
Right. We're going to do that just about the whole time to keep the bar close, because a lot of guys, they'll lose it. And it's because once they get it past their shins, the bar is 2-3 inches out in front of them, and it's almost impossible to pull it back in.
Right. So then what about explosiveness, right? There's some pullers who you see them approach the bar, and they like shake it, and then you just rip it, right? Then you have guys who take their time, and they slowly move into it, but because everything's set in, their form is on point, and they're all tight, the weight eventually breaks off the floor, and they lock it out. What do you generally recommend for people who are trying to raise their pull off the floor? Be more explosive or taking your time?
I'd say taking your time, because a lot of guys, they'll think about, okay, quick off the floor, but a lot of times that will actually make your lockout bad, because you're thinking so much about being so quick that then you're in a total bad position to lock the weight out. So I like telling guys to slow down, and even this alone can increase your speed off the floor. People don't even realize that.
Just by slowing down, it'll increase your speed.
Yeah, just by not even thinking about being fast off the floor. You're just trying to think about what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
So as long as you follow all those tips, you just bend to the bar with your hips. You shove your hips back, touch the bar, engage your lats, keep your chest up, get your breath, and then just let your body do what it's supposed to do, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say someone is trying to do all these cues, but they still find themselves rounding over and unable to use the glutes and the hamstrings. Like it turns into a lower back lift, like where they're rounding like crazy, and it's just an ugly pull. Are there certain assistance movements that you like to recommend to correct that? Or do you think they just have to practice the technique a little bit more and focus on their mobility? Like how do you address people who have difficulties like maintaining that form when using heavy weights?
Yeah, first thing I do is I tell them lower the weight. You can never lift something right, especially when you're learning it new. You can never lift it right unless the weight's low enough. Because a lot of people are so quick to grab that extra plate, that extra 25, the extra 45, but a lot of times it's better to just knock the weight down, kick the ego out of the way, and, try to execute the lift properly.
Right.
But I like that. I mean, you could throw some assistance movements in there. A lot of times the people that, have bad form or, like you said, are not in the right position, a lot of times they don't have a good base to begin with. So I just say the assistance work.
Okay. So what type of assistance movements do you think would be beneficial for a puller? Like I've always said, if you do stuff like heavy barbell rows, reverse hyperextensions, lower back and abs, these are important things. But what do you feel is going to benefit, say, a sumo puller and a conventional puller?
Okay, so no matter what it is, squat, bench, or deadlift, my first assistance movement is always with the barbell. It's like an extra compound movement, but it kind of emulates what the lift is. So with the deadlift, I'll do like a stiff leg deadlift. With the bench press, I'll do a close grip bench press. I
Right.
always make sure it's the barbell or squat, do like a pause squat. But with the deadlift, yeah, stiff leg deadlift is my bread and butter, no matter what. And then I also like doing glute ham raises to, strengthen out glutes and hamstrings. And I don't really like barbell rows that much. I just feel that I kind of lose my air. It's really hard to breathe
Okay. Yeah.
while you're doing this. So I like doing more lat pull downs or cable rows for that.
Okay.
And it's really important, though, to almost feel the stretch really deep and then keep that stretch there and pull yourself in. A lot of guys just try to pull with their arms
Right.
to go really deep into the lats and then keep that tension in the lats the whole time.
Okay. Well, I like the stiff leg, right? But what about the lower back and the abs? Do you do assistance work for that, like in the form of standing cable crunches and reverse hypers, or do you do any stuff like that?
Yeah, like some reverse hypers. I like doing some good mornings as well. I think that's really good for your lower back as well as your hamstrings.
Okay.
And actually, with the branding, I started doing those, the standing cable crunches. It's unbelievable. Like, you'll feel your abs work and your lower back,
Yeah.
just your midsection just gets pumped.
Hmm.
If you do like a nice, 2 or 3 sets of 100 reps, you get pumped.
Well, it's probably my favorite lift actually. In terms of ab movements, it's you can overload it. It's spinal flexion. You're standing up, so it's specific to your squat and your deadlift. It's a great pull. And then second to that, I really like the Zercher rack pulls. Because this way you could really hammer the core hard.
Right, because the weight's trying to pretty much pull you forward.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I think we talked about some good stuff regarding the deadlift. Let's move on to the squat. Do you do stuff like front squats, Zercher squats, pause squat, pin squat? Like, do you like to mix it up in terms of the squats?
Yeah, I like to mix it up, and like I said, it's always the second movement I like to do with the barbell. Like, one week I'll do pause squats. Like I said, towards the end of my training cycle, I'll do max effort with like 1 to 3 reps, and I'll do pause squats. Not really a big fan of the front squats. I've had some bad times with those. I don't really have the
Oh, the wrist
flexibility
is over.
but I guess you could do it this way as well. But even then, I just feel my biceps cramping up almost just from trying to stay super tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, hot squats are another big thing I like to throw in there because I think a thing that a lot of guys struggle with is staying tight in the hole.
Right.
Because a lot of guys, you can stay tight when you're up high, but once you have to get down to competition depth, it's really hard to stay tight. So getting down in that pause position teaches you how to stay tight.
Definitely.
So I like that one a lot.
What about low pin squats? Do you find that helps with tightness and raising strength in certain joint angles?
I've done those as well, but I've done them starting from the pin itself.
Okay.
I know some people like to start out like unracking it like a regular squat and going down, touching the pins and come back up. I think that those would help you a little bit more because coming down and starting at the pins themselves, I feel, once again, it completely changes the movement because you're going to get the most advantageous position to lift the weight, almost like a rack pull would. Like you're going to get your legs more underneath, and it's just not really realistic. You're going to do whatever you can to keep your torso upright.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're going to do it, you're going to start from a regular squat down to the pins and kind of lightly touch, almost like a box squat.
Right. Speaking of box squats, have you used them with success in your training? Because I know a lot of raw lifters say it doesn't work, but then you got guys like Burley Hawk and Matt Wenning using them. So what are your thoughts on box squats as, say, an assistance movement to raise the free squat?
See, it depends if you do it right.
Okay.
Because Matt Wenning, he does them correctly. So you're going to go down, you're lightly going to touch the box. You're not going to let all your weight sit on that because, once again, you let all that weight sit there, and then, once again, you're going to shift your body. You're going to sit back and then sit forward to get your, you're going to rock to get yourself moving.
Yeah.
But I feel that as long as you get down there, you lightly touch that box, keep most of the weight on you. I think that it's good for teaching people how to squat correctly.
Okay, so when people say that box squats don't work, you think it has to do with improper form, like they're using that rolling technique, like you described?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because a lot of exercises get bad rep, but It's because people aren't doing them correctly, you know? Even the injuries too. We see a lot of injuries pop up from guys training like morons. Like the bench press, you see dudes, their shoulders are completely popped forward. They got no retraction to the scapula, and they're doing half reps, and they complain that they have shoulder pain, pec pain, all kinds of things. So I want to know more about the squat. You said, because you incorporate pin squats, pause squats, stuff of that nature, but do you do it towards the end of your training cycles or more so at the beginning stages? Because in a meet, you're going to have to do touch and go, right? So I'm assuming you would start off with the pause, and then towards the end, as you're peaking, you would start doing more touch and go and less of the pins and more so specific, right?
Yeah, maybe towards the end of train cycle, maybe I will throw in like one super heavy pause squat or something. But I kind of do this more so of a technique to test where my strength is without actually doing the main movement itself. Because if you do that, let's just throw out a number there. Let's say I want to squat 551 at my next meet, and I come in and I'm like, okay, the week before the meet, I just want to squat maybe my second attempt, which would be like 525, 530, and it doesn't move as well as I want it. Well, now you're screwed. Now that's stuck in my head leading up to that meet. You know, so I like doing something or give myself somewhat of an excuse. So like if I do, let's say my best pause squat is maybe 430. So I'll go in and do 455 or so. And if it doesn't move that well, that's okay, because like it's say, well, you know, it's not really the regular squat though, so it can't really get in your head as much.
Yeah.
So I kind of do that almost like a tactic, but as well as gauging my strength. Because if I improved on that, most likely I improved on my main lift as well. Because they're so similar.
Exactly. Well, I know some exercises are considered like testers. You could use them to determine where your main lift is kind of at. And do you feel that that lift for you would be like the pause squat? Like once your pause squat is a certain amount, you're like, okay, I know that my free squat progressed. Like, do you base certain lifts off that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it has to be very, very similar, though. Like, it can't be like a, you know, if I squat in low bar, it can't be a high bar close stance squat. Or else you're obviously not going to be able to tell, because even if you improve 10, 20 pounds on that, it doesn't necessarily mean that your regular squat increased. So I like to do stuff like that. Like, it's so similar, and you know, if you've done it before, you kind of have an area of testing. It's like if I've done like set 430 and then I do 450, obviously my main squat improved as well.
Yeah. What about foot stance? Do you feel like the squat should be done with a more narrow stance, say Olympic style, or should it be done with a wider stance and you're sitting back a little bit more? Like, what do you find works best for yourself and most lifters in general? Or is it really just an anthropometry thing where you got to calibrate by feel?
Yeah, I think it's more of a feel thing, but I did notice this even maybe within the past 5 years or so, people are more gravitating more towards being a more quad dominant squatter for rod lifters rather than more hip dominant, because that's the thing. A lot of people started out with geared lifting. That was a big thing, like, you know, back in the 70s, 80s, you know, Ed Cohen and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys had to lift a certain way in order to get the most out of their gear. So they're teaching all these raw lifters and people like ourselves, oh, hey, well, you have to shoot your hips back really far and stuff, but that's not really the best way to lift raw. Because the thing is, I even noticed for myself, because I was even guilty of doing that. Okay. I shift my hips back so far that once I go to push out of the bottom, my hips want to shoot up and then my back would forward. And I kind of fixed that through using a little bit more quad. So instead of breaking just at the hips, I'd break at the hips and the knees simultaneously.
Okay. Yeah. It reminds me of a video that Johnny Candido released, you know, regarding squat form, where you kind of have to make that sink. Because a lot of guys, like, they're just sitting back and they're not bending their knees whatsoever, you know? So it seems that you're doing a similar type of thing.
Yeah, because it started out with people saying, oh, your knees can't travel past your toes. Have a completely vertical upright shin when you're not really generating power, though, through your quads. Of course, they're still working, but your quads are there for a reason. You got to use them. Yeah.
What about shoving the knees out? I've seen some Olympic lifters where they cave it in at the bottom, then when they're coming up, they start spreading. Have you ever used that technique, or do you feel that everything should be like completely shoved out throughout the entire lift? Like, are you strict with the knee positioning?
See, once again, I think that's also feel. Like, I've heard Dan Green does that as well. Yeah. Like, And also JP Kashi, if you ever heard of him, he coached Brett Gibbs for a little
Okay.
bit. But he'll do the same thing. He said, he'll kind of shove his knees in and then push them out as he initiates a squat out of the hole. And he's like, your knees won't actually come in when you try to force them in. But I don't really like that. I don't like playing with fire. I feel like the less movement, the better. Like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like with a certain heavy weight, you should be really going in and out and stuff. But I do think that you should squat straight down and then kind of try to force your knees out as you're initiating the squat out of the bottom.
Yeah. What do you think about certain cues like upper back tightness? Do you like to use a wide stance with your arms or more of a close stance? Elbows up, elbows down. Like, what do you find works best in terms of like optimal squatting technique? Because you have a lot of different answers on this, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah. Once again, it's completely feel. It really is. It depends how healthy your shoulders are too. The healthier your shoulders are, the more close in you're going to be able to grip.
Right.
Um, and some people like to do a thumbless grip. Some like to wrap it around a bar. In which in competition, at least in the USAPL, you have to have your thumbs wrapped around the barbell as well. So
Yeah.
if you're competing at federation, I'd practice the way you play. But in terms of your grip, it's definitely gonna vary. I'd say I have more of like a medium grip. It's not really like Mark Bell does, like out to the sleeves,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not in very close either. So I like to have about a medium grip or so. And then as far as getting your back tight, I really like the cue of trying to like act as if there's a pencil between your back and you're trying to
Yeah.
pinch
Yeah.
it tight. And I've heard some people say that they push up on the bar and some people pull down. I like to pull down. I just feel
Yeah.
like it locks everything in a position
Right.
better. And I try to, as much as I feel like my arms are up, I try to force them down as much as possible.
Okay.
Like it just creates a really nice shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about like mobility drills for upper back tightness? Do you feel that that stuff is important, or just doing like high volume chest supported rows and lat pull downs just to work on that tightness?
Yeah, I think that you need to practice it definitely, but I definitely think that you need that type of assistance work as well. Like I said, if you're the type of lifter that likes to feel like they're pulling a bar down as you're squatting, it, a completely good movement is like a lat pull down behind the neck. You don't have to go extremely heavy, but even Brandon had me doing holds behind the neck. So he'll do
Holds.
kind
Okay.
of like an 8 rep set with a medium weight, and you'll kind of hold it behind your neck for about 5 seconds or so each rep,
Oh,
and that
interesting.
destroys your upper back and
Yeah,
shoulders.
yeah. It sounds like a very interesting lift, and I never actually thought of that. So you made you do a lat pull down behind the neck, and you're just holding in that position, right?
Yeah, for about 5 seconds, or 3 to 5 seconds maybe, with about a medium weight. You don't want it to be too
Yeah,
heavy.
yeah, definitely, yeah. It's pretty cool. Okay. What about like beltless versus belted squats? I hear there's some powerlifters who they start off beltless, then when it's getting closer to the meet, they start using it more. Do you feel like this is beneficial, or should you just train with a belt year round because you're trying to be more specific?
Yeah, I'm thinking once again more comfort. Um, I like to just throw it on whenever I feel like I need it. Really, maybe around 80% or so. I like
Hmm.
to throw it on. Or if I'm feeling good that day, I might throw an extra 25 on and then throw the belt on. So it just all depends. It's more just like a safety precaution.
Okay. So do you think that beltless training has a higher injury risk?
I'd say no, honestly, just because a lot of people can't lift as much with a belt. So I
Okay.
think the lower the weight, the less risk of injury. So I'm not saying it's a less of a risk in general, like your belt at max compared to your beltless max, but I don't think there's really an injury risk, really. I mean, I think unless you go like 90% or above all time beltless,
Right.
then I think there'd be more of an injury.
Okay. What about things like good mornings? Like you talked about it before, but do you feel that if you use it too often, it can negatively impact your squat technique to the point where you're just folding over and you have that classic good morning squat? Like, what do you think about that?
I think as long as you keep your form good and you know what you're doing, like you know the purpose of the good morning and what you're trying to accomplish, and also the same thing with the squat. I don't think there's really an issue with that.
Okay. All right. So I think we talked enough about the squat. Let's move on to the bench press. And I know a lot of gym bros are going to be happy with this one because who doesn't want a bigger bench, right? So what do you think about people who say that all you should do is pause bench, and that you should never do a touch and go rep, and you want to be as specific as possible to competition? Like, what are your thoughts on touch and go benching in general?
I like mixing both up. Once I get close to your competition, I like to be a little bit more specific with pause bench pressing, but with touch and go, I typically train touch and go, especially with higher rep sets.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe like at the end, I might throw in a pause if I'm feeling good or messing around. But I have nothing against either or. I think that whatever you feel comfortable with, especially if you don't compete, I think that either way is fine. But I do think though with pauses, you reinforce more technique, and you end up being a little bit better, a little bit more control of the weight. Because I know a lot of kids that do touch and go, they like to just drop it down and heave it up. Pausing definitely reinforces that form.
Yeah. Well, I definitely find it helps with that, as well as like explosiveness off the chest. Because you're teaching yourself to like come out real fast from a tight position. And I feel a lot of guys who touch and go, they're bouncing like crazy. But what I find strange though is that sometimes you'll see a guy doing a touch and go bench, and people are going to be making fun of the person and insulting them because it's not a pause, And what's funny is that in pausing, because of the federation, some of them have longer pauses than others. Like I think the IPF, these guys they're doing some seriously long pauses, But in other federations, it's like a little touch and that's about it. Like when Eric Spoto did his bench, it wasn't really a long pause, but nobody talks about that, because it's a good number.
Yeah. The same thing with Scott Mendelson too. If you look at his 715 bench, it almost looks like
exactly.
Same with his 716, but I think too. I don't really want to throw people under the bus or anything, but I think it comes more judging and also just like politics and stuff.
Right.
I think people they want to see world records broken, so I feel like they'll somewhat bend the rules a little bit, ever so slightly. Like I've seen some lifters squat really high that's a world record.
Yeah.
And
you see a lot of high squats, and people debate on it over the internet, and it becomes a whole hate fest. See a lot of those. But for the pausing, how's it like for your federation?
Yeah, so USAPL, it's more affiliated with the IPF, so like they're kind of like brothers.
Okay.
And yeah, the same exact thing like you just mentioned. Like you'll get your, you'll unrack the bar, you'll wait about 3 or 4 seconds, get the start command, wait 3 or 4 seconds, press, and then 3 or 4. So, but by the time you're done, you could have done like a 5 or 6 rep set by the time you just rep. So I just think this should be fall by the rule book. It's just once the judge sees that the bar is motionless on the chest, press it, or give the command. And I think that's just the way it should be. But I do think that some, especially in the IPF or USAPL, a lot of these judges are known for being strict, and they're known for being the strictest federation, so they want to try to make sure that they're being extra strict, I think.
Right.
And it's not right. I just think that rules are rules and just follow them.
Right. But what about the idea that if the bar tips a little bit to the side, it's a no lift, even though you locked it?
Yeah, I think it depends on how much of a degree of a...
How much it tips, right?
Like, I'd say, like, if you're going a little bit uneven, but you finish the lockout evenly at the same time, I think that should be okay. But if of course, you have the one arm locked and then the other arm's...
Definitely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts on, like, super high arches? When guys, like, they're trying to reduce the range of motion as much as possible.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of it, but, rules are rules, man. Like, if they follow the rules, they're keeping their feet flat if that's their federation, and their butt stays on the bench, and their shoulders do. They're just working to their advantage, really. They're following the rules, but at the same time, you kind of get a little bit jealous. You're like, man, this guy's moving the bar like 2 inches, and a lot of people are like, man, this ain't a real bench press, though. Okay. Which I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, if the lifter is lifting like that all the time and they're not practicing with less of an arch or like a flat back bench even, like they're missing out on some gains then, you know what I mean? They're not getting that full range than they should be, so they're going to reap what they sow eventually.
Okay. So let's say someone has that extreme flexibility, right? You think that they should do like more full range of motion stuff on top of it, right? Just to make sure that the whole strength base is taken care of. Even though, technically, if they just work on that super arch position, they're getting sport-specific strength, right?
Yeah, I think they should work on both. Definitely, because if you're not, I mean, you're really neglecting, I feel,
Right.
certain muscle groups. Like, even though you can say, okay, well, they're using more weight then, so they're overloading. You know what I mean? Because if they do less of an arch, they might bench 30 pounds less. So, like, of course, they're overloading more, but I just think that then they're going to have to do some more range of motion with, even if they're doing like chest flies or something, they have to do something to really work those muscles the way they should be.
Yeah. Okay. So while we're on the subject, what do you think about people who get pec tears? Do you think it's because they do a lot of partial repetitions and they never really work on the bottom position? Is it related to drug use, bad technique, overuse? Like, what do you think is the common reason why guys are tearing their pecs in meets?
You know, I hate to speculate, but it does seem that a lot of people that do that are more likely on drugs. You do see it a lot. You see the muscle getting a lot
Yeah.
stronger than it gets. And I mean, it does happen though. It could happen to some people, but it's just more so like I know people in real life too that live around my area that have done the same thing and needed surgery and stuff and using PEDs.
Okay. But like, do you think that these pec tears can be prevented with proper form? Like, I've always heard that a lot of guys, they have very strong chest and shoulders, but very, very weak triceps. So all they use when they bench is their chest for the most part, and they're flaring their elbows out completely. And some of them even bring it like really high, like like guillotine style. And I feel that can contribute to more injuries, you know. So do you feel like stuff like tricep extensions and just more overloads for the triceps could be beneficial?
Yeah, definitely. But I could see us going either way too. I could see like if they have a weak chest and they rely more so on the arch and their
Yeah.
triceps, I could see then their pec also tearing just because it can't handle all the weight that's it's under.
Hmm.
So I could see it being either way, any type of weakness. That's why, like we're mentioning right now, it's very important to stay balanced. It's very important to do your system work and really leave no stone unturned.
Right. Okay, so here's gonna be an interesting question. What do you think about extensions for raising the bench press? All kinds of different extensions, done with a barbell, dumbbell, incline, maybe the tape press, JM presses, stuff like that. Do you think that this will have really good carryover to the raw bench in most cases, or should they be doing other type of movements, or should they avoid extensions completely?
See, I think once again it comes to the barbell movement after your main bench press. So, like I think it's very important to do some close grip benching, incline benching with the barbell. But I think more so should be focused more towards that, and then also like even dumbbell bench and heavy dumbbell benches for stabilization purposes. I think that carries over a lot. But as far as extensions go, it's really hard to tell because the bench press is that one exercise where it's like you got it or you don't. You
Hmm.
fail it or you get it up. With this, squat or deadlift, you can power through it or rely on different muscle groups. But for the bench press, it's really weird. Like I've done some tricep extensions with a barbell with 135 pounds for 5 reps, and didn't see an increase in my bench press, even though it improved from 115 for 5 to 135 for 5.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it could improve it, but it's just not like a direct carryover, I feel. It doesn't carry over as much as you think it would, but like I started seeing more increase on my bench once I start going lighter with the extensions, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I feel like it's reinforcing the good form and just getting the pump into the tricep works out better. Like you see a lot of guys doing, like I said, extensions. They'll be using 95 pounds when their max bench is 225, and you're wondering why it's not moving. It's because instead of using their triceps, they're kind of using that rocking motion with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
shoulder. So then once you actually lighten the weight, maybe use like 40, 45 pounds, and you actually do it correctly, you'll be working the triceps.
Hmm. What about people who get elbow pain during extensions? Do you think they should avoid it completely, or should they try to correct the problem by maybe doing more band push downs and band curls and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think that if you're experiencing pain in your elbow from doing that, I think that you have to find a different way around it. Like, let's say that it's hurting from keeping your hand supinated, maybe to have a neutral grip, maybe get that like a football bar and do some tricep extensions like that, or use the ropes. Try something different because there's going to be some type of angle you use it actually won't hurt.
Right.
You just have to find. I wouldn't say completely avoid it. Maybe come back to it. Maybe it was just like a phase or something. But yeah, I mean, I hate it. I really hate, because I deal with that too. I deal with the tendinitis in my elbow all the time, and
Okay.
I'll know it. Half the time it's just from benching heavy. Like, if I bench anything 275 or over for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, I start to feel pain in my tricep. I feel it flare up my elbow. So I do like to train specifically lighter. I would like to train heavier, but I'm not going to, completely avoid it, though. Maybe take like a week off or so, take some anti-inflammatories and ice a bit, but...
What about doing stuff like high volume push downs? Do you feel that this helps in preventing pain, and does it carry over to your bench based off your experience?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's also healthy for your tendon as well. Like we were just mentioned too, with your muscle tissue and the tendon, you're lifting too heavy for what your tendon can handle. It's going to give some point. So in the tricep, in the biceps even, I feel don't need that much weight. A lot of people go way heavier than they should go. Even for curls and stuff, you see guys and bros in the gym curling 35 pounds, and you can't do that with proper form. Even the slightest bit of swing can really make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Like me personally, since my bicep tear, I started to use preacher curls, and I had to start off with 5 pounds in my bad arm, and then with the good arm, I'd use about 10 pounds. And I wouldn't really go over that until my bad arm matched the same weight I was using. And I'm actually seeing better gains in my good bicep than I ever did, because I was using 25s and 30s and stuff, and you don't need that heavy.
So wait, so how much are you lifting then when you do your preacher curls? Like 15 pounds?
Pretty much, yeah. And what I like to do too is I like to use dumbbells, and I'll do like a set of 10, right away switch to the other arm. Set of 10, right away switch. Yeah. I'll just do as many sets as I really could until I start to get fatigued. Because a lot of people, like, they'll curl and then they'll take like a 3 to 5 minute break talking to their buddies, and they'll go back again. And it's really easy to recover, but when you're taking 30-second rest periods for your biceps,
definitely
you get tired.
Yeah, well, the way I see it, you're getting more out of less weight, And as you mentioned before, a lot of guys, they use these heavy dumbbells, and the form becomes really bad. And even if it's not super bad, like you said, little swinging can make a lot of difference. Like, even in myself, I've been doing a lot of gymnastic type stuff, and it's forced me to be more slow. And when I do curls, I notice that if I do really explosively, I can lift double the weight. So people don't realize how much full body explosiveness can help with your curls. And if you really focus on that form and you lighten the load a little bit, you might actually get better gains from it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've talked to some guys that said that they have big arms that say, listen, I didn't start getting big arms until I start lifting lighter. And everyone thinks that they're lying, but it's true. Just that muscle-mind connection. If you're lifting, you'll see guys curling, and it's what are you even doing? You're bending your arm. It's okay, well, are you not thinking about the bicep? Are you not thinking about, staying strict and not using your shoulder and stuff like that?
Right.
Because that's a lot of things. They'll go in the gym and they're just boom, 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 not even thinking about what they're doing. You know what I mean? But until you actually feel yourself doing it right and feel the muscle working, you're not doing it right.
Yeah. So in regards to the biceps and the arms in general, do you train your biceps mainly for injury prevention or because you want aesthetic benefits? Why do you train your biceps in the way that you do?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I've never been a guy to have huge bicep peaks or anything. I have more of a strongman type of physique with my arms. But, I mean, who doesn't want good-looking biceps?
Yeah.
But at this time now, ever since my bicep injury, I'm thinking twice about it because I kind of train heavy. I do some cheat curls and stuff. My best cheat curl I did was 275 pounds.
Holy shit.
And I did that a year and a half ago. I did 225 for a set of 10. And, of course, that's involving a lot of back. But I do think that it does use some bicep, too. You're still bending your arm. You're still using, especially at the top. But, yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking more so in the long run. I'm thinking, okay, let's not tear this other arm now.
Okay.
Not really worried about the bad arm now because the way my surgeon told me that he stitched it in there, it's not moving. So I'm not worried about that I'm just worried about the good one now. So that in itself is a battle when you're thinking about pulling weights and stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
why I think my deadlift is suffering right now. Mentally, even though I'm trying to pick that weight up, it's just like holding me
Yeah.
back from going that heavy.
Well, then, have you considered doing stuff like the hook grip? Has it crossed your mind, or it just doesn't feel that good when you do it?
Yeah, actually, I've been practicing sumo a little bit. I really suck at sumo. Even though I did 665 conventional, my best sumo was only like 540. It just feels
Okay.
so foreign to me. I started working with that recently, and then of course I got sick, but I just feel so awkward using a mixed grip with sumo. Like it just
Yeah.
feels really weird to me. I don't feel powerful at all. So I'll do double overhand until I feel like I can't do it anymore, and then I'll switch to hook grip. But the thing is with hook grip compared to the mixed grip, I like with the mixed grip getting my air at the top and then going down. But the
Mhm.
mixed grip, it's really, or with the hook grip, it's really hard to do that unless you're really good at mastering it. So you kind of have to go down, set your hook grip in, and then get your air. So it's a little bit different to me, but I'm willing to work with it. But with conventional, though, I just don't feel as powerful either. Like I need to use that mixed grip. I
Yeah.
feel.
But like you're not scared because you said you were worried about your good arm, right? So like, which hand do you put now when you're doing the mixed grip? Do you use your bad arm, like the one that had surgery, or the good one?
You see, even before my bad arm, the arm that I tore was always my overhand anyway.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
that's the thing that kind of, and that's the thing that gets you thinking a little bit too, because like we were saying about, what do I think is the cause of the tear? And
Right.
it almost feels like because I was using an underhand grip, when I was pushing that pallet across the floor, it didn't tear because it was so used to being in that supinated position anyway. And now that my bad arm was in that supinated position, pushing that pallet is why it might have
Hmm.
torn. So
Interesting.
it's a little weird. Like I feel like it might be something there. There might be something with the tendon strength,
Yeah.
like we're talking about, because there's that extra stretch on a deadlift.
Right. And
But
also, sorry, when you used to do your rack pulls barehanded, yeah, I guess that would also strengthen your bicep tendon, right? Because you always had an overhand with the one that was bad, right?
yeah,
Okay. So basically, you had all this overload on one of your biceps, and the other one was always in one position. So it's possible that when you started doing underhand stuff, that might have led to the tear, right? Just a possibility, a speculation.
yeah, yeah, possibility. Now that I think about it a little bit more, so I think that actually would be a good idea if you do use mixed grip, like these viewers out here watching. It would not be a bad idea to switch your grip up a little bit, even if it does feel a little bit awkward. Switch up your mixed grip once in a while. It wouldn't be a bad thing to do.
Hmm. What
Plus, a
about
lot of
doing stuff like underhand rows, like Yates rows and stuff like that? Do you think that would be beneficial?
it could be. I feel almost like the underhand grip with the rows can almost be better for feeling the lat engagement. I just feel like it's just more natural, and plus, I feel like it would hit your even rear delts a little bit better as well, just from using that type of grip. You might be able to go a little bit deeper as well. So it's completely different. And a lot of guys too, like with the overhand grip, they like to, like you said, flare your elbows out
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
rows. When I feel no matter what, you should be tucking your elbows in.
Right.
So with the underhand grip, you're forced to tuck your elbows in anyway. So it's
Yeah.
kind of good form.
Well, actually, I know the reverse grip bench press. Obviously, it's underhand, and it forces you to, like, your elbows are so tucked in that you're using a lot of back. Like, you're really rowing that bar down, and you can't afford to flare. Like, the moment you flare on that lift, like, the bar just stops, like, you fail it. Plus, you
Yeah,
gotta, yeah. So I think you're right on the money when you say that underhand grip will force you to really tuck and be tight.
yeah, because it's like just try to flare your elbows out with the underhand
Yeah,
grip.
it's weird. It's awkward. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
impossible.
So like, how important is upper back tightness on the bench press? Because I've seen some old school guys like their back is completely flat and they're just pressing it out with their pecs. Then you got other dudes who are like really really tight. Like I know Dave Tate. If you saw his tutorial, the bench press cure, he says that you should not be able to move your body like an inch. You should be so locked in. everything from the leg drive to the upper back, and like you should be completely drilled into that bench. Is that how you feel about bench tightness?
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to use your whole body. Like some guys will, really tighten their upper back, and then they're not tightening up their legs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just actually you being unstable as well. Like even though that upper back is tight, like you just feel so much more powerful when you're connected to the floor as well with the bench press. But as far as like really tightening your back up, I feel like a lot of guys, they try to really over exaggerate, trying to squeeze their shoulder blades together, and then they feel like it's almost weird to press away from you.
Right.
So I feel like as long as you just tuck your shoulders back to keep them safe from, flaring out and having your elbows way out here, as long as you tuck them back real nice and don't over exaggerate it, I think that you're good. But I think that's a little over exaggeration from Dave Tate. He just
Right. Okay. Well, what about what about the leg drive though? You said you feel so much better when everything is as one, one full unit. Because I see some guys when they do bench, they're gonna be tight in the upper back, but then their lower body, their ass comes off the bench. Do you think that has to do with a technique flaw, or is it because they're just trying to compensate to lift more weight?
See, I think it's because they use the leg drive, but they use it improperly, though. What they're doing is they're pushing up, like they're almost pressing into the floor like a leg press, and that's making their butt shoot up rather than using the floor as like a leg extension. So you're pushing against the floor with your tippy toes, and you're trying to almost do a, quad extension.
Right.
I think that's the way you should be doing it.
Okay, that's a pretty cool tip. What about the positioning? There's some guys who have like wide legs. Other people, they're more in. Some people are tippy toe benchers. Others, they're flat.
Yeah, I think once again it depends on like your leg length and stuff. Like guys that have really long legs might have to force their knees out and legs out a little bit more. Shorter guy might get away with the legs a little bit closer.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like just try to get it out pretty. Just try to get your knee lower than your hips is what I think in order to stay powerful. That just means you're in a powerful position, because if it's up higher, you're not really using the leg drive the right way.
Right.
You're not really like coiled. You're not like a powerful source to press that weight.
And based off your experience, how much do you think that leg drive can add to a bench press?
See, I'm not really too huge into that. Like, I don't even notice, honestly. Like, I started out just being a flat back bencher a couple of years ago, but I feel just from tucking my shoulders back, my shoulder blades, I feel like that added more to my bench than anything, like even more than a leg drive. But the leg drive is something you almost don't even feel like you're using. Like, it's really weird. Once you get so used to it, it just feels like another day in the office. But I feel like it could add a little bit. I've heard of people getting, 20 pounds out of their leg drive, or like you ever hear Bart Kwan? You know him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like he says he gets like 30 pounds off his bench, which is pretty ridiculous. But I just think it's more with staying tight. I think that's the more important rather than the leg drive itself. But really, just getting that leg drive also, it could just help everything stay tighter, and it might help your chest stay a little bit higher to decrease range of motion.
Yeah, let's say someone keeps doing the bench, right, with proper technique, but they continue to experience shoulder pain. Do you think that's because of muscular weaknesses? Obviously, if your technique is on point, what could be causing the pain?
I don't really think there should be then. It might just be, you might just be lagging with the assistance movements. Like, there's some guys that just solely focus on the bench press. Like we were talking about the minimalist training. Some of these guys will go just by that movement, but you definitely need to at least have healthy shoulders. You need to make sure your mobility is good with your shoulders as well. Like a lot of guys might be too tight. They might be using too much shoulder, and then like they might be pretty strong, but it's just their mobility just sucks, and that can lead to pain in itself.
Right. What about things like the rear delts? I personally find that too many guys, they're not hitting the rear delts at all. Like they're doing nothing for it, And I think that this contributes to injuries as well as all kinds of muscular imbalances. Like, do you feel that rear delt training should be very important for a serious bencher? or even just a serious lifter, period.
Oh my God, yeah. Just if you're doing it right and you're one of those lifters too to use your lats, you just feel too when you're in the bottom and you're exploding out of the bottom using your lats the right way, but you also feel the back of your shoulder also working hard out of the bottom if you're doing it right with the tucked elbows and stuff. And not only that, but also the deadlift as well. Like a lot of people, like they'll like doing their face pulls and stuff to get their shoulders back in the deadlift. I feel like that's also a crucial part. So I definitely do think that you should really train every part of the shoulder.
Okay, basically have no weak links. Make sure that everything's
Right.
on point. Okay. I know you mentioned before, like when you started, it used to be a flat bencher, right? But then you started retracting your scapula and everything went smooth. Do you have any tips for guys who struggle to get tight on their bench, particularly in the upper back? Like, are there any cues that you could do? Like, I know Matt Wenning, he has you do reverse band bench with like an empty bar, and he just has you roll the bar down, and that supposedly really helps with upper back tightness.
Yeah, so one thing I don't really do this, but I've done it to find the upper back tightness as well, and I've told other people about this, and they really are like, wow, I actually do feel it, is if you just lay it on the bench press and you put your feet up on the bench and kind of push yourself up like a hip thrust, and you kind of feel all the pressure on your upper back. I feel like that's a good thing. You feel that pressure, and then you try to go down again and try to, get your legs tight and your upper back tight and everything, and feel that same pressure that you felt. I think that's one good way.
Okay, cool. Now, in terms of the bench itself, I find that most powerlifters, they tend to use like wider benches, like they're higher quality benches, and some of them they even take a band and they put it on top of that. Have you ever experimented with that just to make sure that everything's more locked in?
No, I actually never have.
Really?
I've seen people do that though, but the bench that we have at my gym is really good bench. I think it's actually the same exact bench that Mark Bell has, that nice red one. I think that my gym owner won it at like an auction or something. He put in like a raffle for it. It was such a good bench press. Like the padding on it is ridiculous.
Okay.
It's really wide out.
And the wide bench, like have you ever used like really cheap benches, the ones that are very narrow, say the ones found in the commercial gym, and have you seen a difference between that and the high quality one that you got?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially if you're a bigger guy too. Like if you're 200 pounds plus, to really get them shoulder blades back is really tough to tightness. Like you might feel the one side of your shoulder blades start to roll off the bench and stuff. It's not pretty.
Okay, so a wider bench is very good then for maintaining tightness and everything.
Exactly.
What about putting chalk on the bench? Have you ever done that, or it's just not necessary?
I've noticed that in powerlifting meets because I have somebody chalk up my upper back for squats, and I kind of noticed for the bench it's a little bit easier to get tight, or not get tighter, but use the bench as like your ground, and kind of like imagine yourself as a roller, and you're trying to get your upper back tight and your lower body tight, and you feel like the arch is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of sticking to the bench better. Because I notice when I don't do that, like when I'm just lifting at the gym, I'll just feel myself. Kind of when I'm trying to set myself up, I feel my chest start to fall in a little bit.
Right. I heard this from a guy who benches 450, and he said that one of his secrets for bench tightness is to wear a tank top or a singlet. He says when there's skin against the bench, it kind of like it molds better, and you're more tight compared to wearing just a standard t-shirt. Like, have you found that to be true based off your experience? Like when you bench, do you wear something where the sleeves are cut off, or it doesn't really make that much of a difference for you?
Right. Well, for a lot of the time when I first started lifting, I had a bench in my parents' house, and right now, even down in my basement now, I have my own at-home bench.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll go shirtless, and like you said, like you feel the skin just able to dig into that bench better. So definitely, I've seen a huge difference with that.
Okay. So I want to discuss specialty bars, and if you have like basically your thoughts on it, your experiences with it. Like, what do you think about things like the cambered bar, buffalo bars, things of that nature? Do you find it's beneficial in raising the raw bench, and is there a carryover based off your experience, or should you really just hammer in the standard bench more and more?
I have used a camber bar bench press bar before, and the one we have at my gym though is a really high camber. Like it's really like 4 or 5 inches. Like
Okay.
a lot of second gyms, you'll see maybe like a 1 or 2 inch difference from regular bar. Like it folds in that much, but it was just way too bad. But I tried to emulate though. Like I'd still go like 2 inches off my chest just to see, and you do feel a lot more stretch in the pecs.
Yeah.
And like I feel like you have to go light with that though. I feel like if you go heavy, you start going like 85% or more of your max with that lift. You could really, like we were talking about pec tears and stuff.
Yeah.
It's definitely a higher risk, and also for your shoulder, injuries and stuff. But definitely if you go lighter and you feel just like a nice stretch, nothing crazy, and maybe for your shoulder mobility it might help. But
Hmm.
that's about it though. Like I wouldn't really play with fire and do like 1 rep maxes or anything with that.
Right. What about the legally wide bench press? I know Louis Simmons prescribes that. He says where you go outside the rings, but you do reps of 5 or 6. Have you ever tried that?
No, yeah, I have tried it before, but once again, I would not go heavy with that. Um, it's just one of those things you're playing with fire. I feel like it's one of those assistance movements that you would do right after your main barbell movement, just to get a little bit blood pumping. But it's definitely not something that I'd train like an Eric Bugenhagen approach or anything. You're really looking at
Yeah.
snaps and stuff. And
Definitely. Okay, so like if you could name me your top assistance movements for raising the bench, what would they be?
like top 3 or something.
Like a top 5, something like that. Just some movements that you feel are very, very, like extremely beneficial for raising the raw bench.
All right, so one you probably already know: close grip bench press.
Yep.
Dumbbell bench press, like on a very slight incline. I'd say maybe like a 30% incline or something. I feel like that's really good and healthy for the pecs.
Okay.
And, maybe like 5 sets of 10 to 12 with that.
Hmm.
Incline bench press as well, like with the barbell, but once again, not a super sturdy or super high incline. I'd go once again with like a 35% incline with that. Slingshot bench press as well. I really like that. Helps overload the top, and
Right.
that's really about it.
Okay. So it's pretty like basic, classic, time-tested movements, and it's all quite specific, you know?
Yeah.
The only thing where I would see people having like minor like troubles would be the incline bench, possibly. Like I've heard some powerlifters say that the incline doesn't carry over that much for them. Others say that it's like superb. Do you feel that maybe overhead pressing could be beneficial as well, or it's too far off from a bench?
Yeah, see, with the incline bench topic, that's exactly why I'd prescribe like a 30% incline, because a lot of gyms will have 45 to 50%,
Yeah.
and that definitely does not carry over. But if it's like a slight incline, I definitely do think it could
Okay.
carry over. But as far as the overhead press for increasing a bench, it's one of those things that doesn't really go hand in hand. I think that, if you increase 5 or 10 pounds on that, you could see your bench not even move sometimes. Or you could see your bench even move without increasing your overhead press. But I definitely do think it's good to keep in there for shoulder health and just general strength.
Okay. Awesome. What about the idea that if you want to get a bigger bench, you have to eat your way to bigger bench? Do you feel that surplus calories and just raising the body fat is very important for increasing the bench, or could just a standard diet ensure that you're good?
Yeah, I think that if you maintain your body weight for a long time, I think that you could still see increases in the bench press. But I think that more so for the bench, you're going to see more carryover than you would with the squat and deadlift with gaining weight. Because when you're talking about the deadlift and stuff and you start gaining weight, it might change your whole entire position, your technique in the deadlift. Some people actually see a drop off in the deadlift from it. And then also in the squat, the same thing. But the bench press is always that movement where typically if you gain weight, you're probably going to gain strength.
Yeah, I've heard guys say it's because of the cushioning. You know, you have more mass on your body, so the range of motion decreases a little bit. And people don't realize it, but an inch or two can make a huge difference in terms of how it feels. You know, it can change the joint angles of your elbows and stuff like that.
Right, right.
Yeah, like I know J.M. Blakely was really big on diet, like saying that you have to eat like crazy. you ever read that post by Dave Tate, the insane diet that he used to do? Just
I don't
curious.
think so.
You never heard of
No.
it? Oh man, when you got free time, look it up. You'll see. It's it'll give you a good laugh. Trust me on that one. So like, what about bloating though? Do you feel that if you have like a high carb diet or stuff high in salt, like do you think that you should get bloated before bench training to make it so that you have more energy and the range of motion is decreased? Say like having an extra large pizza before a bench training session.
Yeah, no, I mean, some things like that can actually make you feel like crap. I know from experience, like I've done that sometimes where like, all right, I'm maxing on a bench tomorrow. I'm just going to get Burger King today and an extra Whopper or something like that. And sometimes you just feel like extra crap, but I do think that you should be eating in a little bit of a surplus, though, if you're going to go super heavy on the bench press, like an all-time PR or something. But try to still keep it healthy, though. Maybe majority of your food's healthy, and then maybe throw like a bowl of ice cream in there or something like that. Just to help you feel good. Eat anything that you feel is going to make you feel strong that day. I'm a big person on that, where, you know, if I have a big day coming up, I don't want anything to get in my way. Like, if I'm so sick of eating beef and rice, I'm not going to eat that the day before a big lift. I'm going to eat things that make me feel good mentally and physically.
Okay, cool.
Particularly, like you said, like you want to make sure your salt intake is really up there too, so you can hold on to a little bit more water. You're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have a little, maybe like a candy bar to have a little bit extra sugar in there, some more energy.
Right. Okay, so what about caffeine intake? I know Johnny Candido released a good video recently talking about hyping up and caffeine, and I think his recommendation was when you're trying to hit a serious PR, you should be having like 400 milligrams. And when I heard that, I was like, holy crap, because I never really had that amount, you know? I've always been fine with like even 100 grams. So like, what are your thoughts on caffeine? Do you use it to increase your performance?
No, not really. I mean, I feel like that's almost like a pre-workout in itself. Like a lot of people, like they just want to feel awake and ready, and I feel like that's all that caffeine really is anyway. Same thing as like taking a hit of like a smelling salt or something before a big lift. Like you just feel awake, you feel ready, you know. And I feel like it's something that would, you know, be good to wake up your body, so to speak.
But do you use it personally? Like when you go to meet, do you go crazy on caffeine? Like you have a bunch of coffee, and do you have the smelling salts when you're pulling or stuff like that, or even benching?
No, not really. I don't really do that. I'll just have my normal meals and stuff because I just feel like if you do that, you're going to start relying on it.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be like, oh no, I need that cup of coffee. I need this pre-workout in order to work out today. And I just feel like that's just such a bad route to take. Okay. I feel like it's almost like a placebo effect to an extent. I feel like it's almost like a drug. When people are taking it and it feels good, then as soon as you get off, you feel like crap, and you know, you feel like you need that in order to do things. So I try to stay away from that whole, you know, thing.
Okay. But I do know, I think it was a video you talked about a while back. You said that when you're lifting heavy, like you think about bad things, and you get like in a really aggressive mindset. But is that the same as like hyping up? Is it a similar process? And do you put like really aggressive music? Basically, are you going like Bugenhagen mode when you're trying to hit these PRs, or are you just like how do you go about it if you want to like really smash some weights and put up some good numbers?
Oh yeah, it definitely depends, man. It depends on what movement I'm doing particularly. With the squat, I feel like I need something a little bit hard on. I definitely do, but I don't really focus so much on all the negative thoughts because I feel squats are one thing I kind of struggle with my technique, and I have to pay extra attention to. But I feel like that stuff works more so towards lifts that you don't really have to think about that much, or that you know, master. You know, like if you're really good at the deadlift and you have perfect technique, I think that those things could really come in handy because you've already done so many perfect reps that it's just like another day. So, you know, I definitely think that whatever you have to do to get ready. But personally, for me, like the trap bar deadlift, for instance, I did 810-pound trap bar deadlift before. Right. I just lose my mind because I feel like it's that type of movement where you're standing right inside of the bar, and all you have to do is just lift it straight up.
Pretty
Like
much, yeah.
there's no like with the regular deadlift where you can lose the bar out in front of you or anything. It's kind of you get it off the floor and then you just push your hips in that thing.
Yeah.
And something I don't really have to think about, and I kind of almost like get a high from, all the anger and aggression. Like it's really weird. It's like it feels like crap, but then once you actually complete the lift, it feels amazing.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. It's like really, it's like a raw type of lift, like an animal type of lift. It's not really technique focused, if you will. It's just you grab the freaking handles and you pull, and it's such a simple movement, So I could see you getting like crazy on that, and maybe that's why you're putting up such crazy numbers. But that said, the trap bar deadlift. I don't want to go back too much about deadlifts, but do you feel like it had a lot of carryover to your conventional? Because we're seeing a pretty big difference here of like 150 pounds, So like, do you find that it's beneficial?
Yeah, I feel like it's beneficial just in the number standpoint because like you if I walked up to a bar with 675 on it, it's really going to get in my head. I'm going to be thinking about it. But then if I come in the week before or something and deadlift something crazy like 810 or 815 on a trap bar, it's not going to really seem that intimidating mentally to me,
right.
Even though it's a completely different movement. So I think that's more so a placebo effect as well. But I think it's really good for teaching you how to shove your hips in. Even though it's like I said, it's not exactly the same thing, but with the trap bar, it's so easy to shove your hips in once you get it off the floor, and it kind of teaches you the way that your muscles should feel at that given time when you're pushing your hips in. So I do think it could help you mentally, but I just don't think it once again, it's a completely different movement.
Yeah.
Like I feel like trap bar is more like just raw brute strength, and the deadlift itself is a little bit more technical.
Right. And also there's a huge quad component to it as well, and your body's like more in an upright position. So it's kind of mimicking like not even a rack pull. It's just different leverages in a sense,
Yeah.
But like what about things like behind the back deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts, stuff like that? Like, I know it's also a bit different, but I've heard some strength coaches, they're really big on the snatch grip lifts, They say that it mimics a deficit deadlift, and your back angle is still kind of similar to conventional, but you're getting more range of motion, and it hits the upper back a bit harder. Like, have you experimented much with the snatch grips?
Oh, yeah. I did that a lot in Brandon Lilly's programming.
Okay.
And I actually didn't do them up until then, but I did notice that you're moving the bar so much further than you think. It's very, like you said, it's so similar to a deficit deadlift. And I feel like you also have to engage your lats so much harder. It makes your whole body just work so much harder. And it's really weird. It's almost like, do you ever try Reeves deadlift?
Yeah, but I have really short arms, so I can't even freaking grab it.
Yeah. I tried. It's almost similar to Reeves deadlift where your hands are way out, and people would think that it's more of your grip, like you're gripping onto the plates, but it's more so like a clamp truck, like you're clamping.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. Like you don't even realize until you do it how much it is like that. But it's like your lats are working so hard, once again, with the snatch grip deadlift as well. It's very similar.
Mm-hmm. I feel like guys can replicate that sensation if they go on a cable station and you just grab like two handles and they focus on really pulling apart with that like really wide stance, and they're gonna get a similar feeling, because it's like you got to be so tight with that upper back.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. It's almost like the strongman holds, where they hold the Hercules grip.
Yeah.
Very similar, because like it's trying to pull your shoulders out of your socket, and you need to keep everything so super tight. Like you need to keep your lats tight almost, and
yeah. It's a sick lift, crucifix holds, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like strongman. Strongman is really badass. The exercises, there's a lot of variety, and it compares your strength in a multitude of different ways.
Oh yeah. I think people are seeing that there's a bunch of different ways, especially now with the internet. But back then, there was just all these, magazines out saying this is the way or that's the way. But now with the internet, I just feel like there's so many different ways to cut and slice things. And there's so many different elite people, lifters in the world, given so many different types of information on, technique and even, lifting methods and stuff. And the truth is they all work.
Yeah.
It's just, I think they really do all work. It's just dependent upon if you're into it or not. I think your mind has to mentally be into it. Like, if you look at a program and your buddy's doing it as well, and you're like, oh man, this program's great. But then you go and look at it and you're just like, and then you go and do it. The chances you're going to get better are slim. You need to go in loving what you're doing.
So you really got to be passionate about it, and you got to have that drive. Otherwise, the performance doesn't really budge, right? Like when you were overcoming injury, it's something that you really want to do, and you put your heart and soul into it. And when you went to that meet, it was like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to hit some serious numbers. And the drive was there, right?
Right.
That's kind of how, yeah. What about general strength training? Do you incorporate like different forms of activities, like general physical preparedness, like pulling a sled maybe, or doing bodybuilding training every once in a while? Like, do you do other things than just trying to raise your squat, bench, dead? Like, do you incorporate certain accessory movements that aren't necessarily specific, but you still see physical effects on your body?
Oh, yeah. Once again, when I trained with Brandon, this is where it's all came to play, because I was so much of like a one-trick pony, like I'd do just my main linear progression, which I did see progress for a very long time, and I still continue to see it, but I started implementing some of the things that he taught me, which was that type of training. It's like active recovery.
Yeah.
And like just mentally how it prepares you as well, because he'd have me do these lunges for like 100 yards with a barbell on my back and stuff, and man, that's just, it kills you. But at the end of the day, it's almost like if you didn't do that, you'd be more tired. Like, it's really weird how with the short rest periods and then also throwing that training in, you seem to have almost more energy afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really have access to like sleds or anything. I'm sure you could get pretty creative with certain things, but with stuff like that, farmer walks. I really like farmer walks. Definitely, it feels great to grip something and lift something heavy and walk with it. It feels very powerful, and I'd rather do that than run 10 miles on a treadmill.
I hear you. Okay, when you were working with Brandon, though, was that like one of the first times where you really had to experiment with a higher exercise selection? Because before that, it was more like basic, right? And he made you do all kinds of stuff, I'm assuming here.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've tried a bunch of different things throughout my lifting career, but in more of like a training standard, like to actually prepare for a meet, all these different exercises he had me do, like I never tried them before. Like, you ever hear of a clove press?
Yeah,
like,
when you go behind the neck really wide. And,
that's so hard. When you're
it's difficult. Yeah, definitely.
Squat down and then you press the bar. It's even harder to empty bar your first time. It's really hard to do some of these things, but it just prepares you in such a different way mentally. Like, it gets you so much more mentally tougher to do so many different exercises and get good at them.
Well, I think it's really cool that you worked with Brandon Lilly, Like, I've been following him for a long time. I've seen his progression, how he does things, and I think he's a real genuine, humble dude. And it's cool that you got in contact with him and he wrote your programming. But was he, like, reviewing your stuff every week? Like, was it, like, serious online coaching, or was it just he wrote you out a program and that's it?
Oh, no, it was good. Like, he had me in a private Facebook group as well, and he puts all of his clients in that. And you post your videos either daily or weekly, however you choose to do it, and he'll review them, and if he sees any flaws, he'll kind of say something, but, if everything looks good, he won't really say anything. It's up to you to tell him, this didn't feel great, or this felt awesome, so then he could kind of, gauge it and come up with new training weeks and stuff.
Like, as you're going through the program, you're posting, and it's being modified as you go type of deal, right?
Right, like, it seemed almost like every client he had him doing pretty much every exercise, like, very similar, but once again, he'll adjust it depending on if you have a bad week or a good week or something like that.
Okay, that's cool. And, like, was that one of your first times using, like, a more conjugate type programming? Because it was the cube, right? He made you do the cube system.
Yeah, pretty much. He definitely, he had me squatting 3 days a week sometimes, squatting twice a week. I was only used to squatting once a week. and then benching sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, which I once again was only used to doing it once a week because I was doing more of a traditional powerlifting program, and I kind of saw that the squats were a bit too much. Like I said, 3 days a week is just for me because I do manual labor as my job, and it was a little bit too taxing for me. But as far as the bench press went, benching twice a week seemed to be about the key to get stronger. I started to feel stronger and better.
Okay. And after that experience, do you think that like it molded you like permanently? Because now you see things from a new lens, and like, are you still going to be benching twice a week and using the parameters that you use with Brandon, or are you going to go back to like a different type of training style?
Yeah, it definitely opened up my eyes to different methods, and I kind of saw what worked and what didn't work with him. Like, obviously, nothing's perfect. There's going to be things that, like, squatting 3 days a week wasn't my cup of tea. It just didn't really work for me. But maybe twice a week, maybe once again, maybe just like a normal squat day, like 5x5 or 4x5 or something. And then the second day, maybe split it throughout the week, do like 10 sets of 3 with maybe 60% or something. And once again, not really for speed or anything, but more of a mental toughness thing where I'll take like a minute rest or so then I have to get ready to, get up to the barbell every single set and, get a little bit extra work in. I think that's what us naturals need as well.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree. I find that a lot of naturals, they're half-assing their workouts, number one, because they think that they can't push themselves that hard because their recovery is not as optimal. But the way that I see it, if you're natural, you're not going to be lifting as heavy, right? So your total workload is going to be a lot less. Therefore, your ability to recovery is going to be pretty good. It's not like you're pulling 900 pounds off the floor and you need all kinds of recovery. So I feel it's a lot of times there's a cop-out aspect, Dudes are like, they set the standard so low and they don't push themselves whatsoever. And they see a guy that's natural like yourself who's putting in the work, and a lot of times you're going to jump to conclusions saying that, oh, he must be a fake natty, or there's always some ridiculous reason, right? But in reality, it's just that the total workload is less, therefore they're able to push themselves a bit harder,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, I think even George Lehman made a video about it. He said naturals can do a lot more work than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I just think that it all comes within selecting the right attempts. Like, even when the coaches write out a program and they give you certain percentages to use, like, you'll use your all-time best ever when you might not be there right now currently. So you kind of have to, like, my rule of thumb is whatever your max is, if you're plugged into a program, maybe chop that down by about 20 pounds or so just to be safe, because it's so much better to be doing a little bit less than more, definitely.
Okay. But in the case of yourself, like, exactly what your 1 rep maxes are, right? But those are like in peak conditions. Do you still follow that rule of thumb? Like your bench, would you base it off that amount, or would you lower it by 20 pounds?
See, I don't really work off percentages right now, but when I was working with Brandon, I had to kind of see where I was. Like, I didn't really max out yet because of the bicep injury and stuff. It was still relatively new, but I kind of just guessed where I was at and shot a little bit lower than I probably am at. Like, I used like a 500-pound squat, when in reality, if I wanted to, I probably could have squatted 530, 540, just to be a little bit on the safe side. But yeah, I'd say, like, let's say you're getting coached by somebody and they have these percentages out for you, they already have in mind that you were peaked out when you hit those numbers.
Exactly, yeah.
So what Brandon will do is he'll base your percentage off of 90%.
Okay.
Yeah, so, like, whatever your max is, your training max is always 90%. And then you base your percentages off of that 90%.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb because it ensures longevity. It'll prevent you from like overreaching real fast. You're going to be working within reasonable weights, and it's a nice system of preventing ego lifting and just making sure that everything is smooth sailing. Because a lot of guys sometimes they take it a bit too far, especially with the percentages. Say their max bench is 370. Well, they might base it off 380 or 390. And that skews the entire program. And then as they're like getting towards the end of it, they're like, damn, I'm not going to hit these numbers, So they got to restart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's like one of the videos I made a couple months ago was everybody's looking 100 pounds ahead. As soon as
Yeah.
you hit a 300-pound bench, everybody's like, oh, 400. When really it's like, bud, let's get 310, let's get 315. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just ridiculous because people don't realize. Because let's say you hit a max bench and you hit 375 or so. Just think of 380. You know what I mean? Just add in 5 pounds, how much heavier that feels. Imagine 25 or 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
People bite off so much more than they could chew.
So like when you're peaking typically, do you at the end of your program, do you tend to include it by 5, 10 pounds more, or is it major jumps? Like for the bench, is it actually like 5 pounds? Like the next time you attempt a one or max, are you gonna try to shoot for like 380, 385 ish? Is it like that gradual?
Yeah, pretty much at this point in time, my training, I as a natural, especially, I kind of realized that my gains are slowing down, and it's just something you have to accept. As long as you're a natural lifter, it just happens. Like you start out, you might notice like a 50-pound jump in a year on a bench, and then you slowly get diminishing returns, and that's the part of the game, and that's why a lot of lifters they'll stop at a 300-pound bench or they'll stop at
Yeah.
like a 500-pound deadlift because they realize how much work they really have to continue doing just to get a little bit better. And it's those guys that stick with it for 10, 20 years that are putting up these ridiculous numbers.
Exactly. And people don't understand like how difficult it is when you're actually at that level. Like I can only imagine for you trying to get that 700-pound deadlift. The amount of work that's going to be required is going to be insane. It's going to have to be like some serious some serious programming, just to add like 50 pounds. And when you're a novice, when you're doing like 300, it's like 350 is right around the corner. But for the difference between 655 and 700, it's like, damn, man, that's going to take a while. Speaking
Oh
of
yeah.
which, do you think you're going to hit that amount with enough time? Because obviously you had to overcome this injury. So where do you see yourself in a few years from now in terms of numbers?
Yeah, see, I mean, it's really hard to say because a year from now, your lifts might increase 10 pounds, it might increase 40 pounds, whatever. You just have to give it your best every single time and, just hope for the best because, like we were talking about pec tears and all this stuff, all these injuries could just
Yeah.
creep up. So you just have to do whatever you could do to stay injury free. And I never limit myself though. I never, as crazy as it sounds, I could see myself deadlifting 1,000 one day. And
Okay, awesome.
I think that's something that almost every lifter should have is never limit yourself. Never say, oh, well, I'm never going to hit an 800-pound deadlift.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You never know what you could do. But I do think, yeah, definitely someday 700-pound deadlift is going to happen. It definitely will fall. As long as I stay injury-free and, keep on the grind and keep my programming smart.
Definitely. Yeah, I think staying injury free is the most important thing you have, especially as a natural. Because when you get snapped up, it's a bunch of setbacks and you got to rebuild, and it's just a long little process. And so I think staying injury free is like, it's more important than anything else. It's more important than being the strongest or the biggest. Like that should take priority for most guys, even being healthy. But like I like your mentality on not like giving up on yourself and setting the bar real high, And I think that's what has allowed you to get this level of strength. It's the mindset. Who are you? You're thinking on a higher level of consciousness, and therefore you're able to push yourself to reach extreme heights. Like I've heard some comments from guys saying that most people in the gym are weak because of genetics. And honestly, I think it's a bunch of baloney. It's not that they have bad genetics, it's that they don't have that mindset down and they settle for less. Like it can't be that you're some like freak of nature, that you're the ultimate like you're the ultimate life force on this earth. Obviously there has to be other people out there who can produce similar numbers. It's just that they don't think like you, and that's why they're not getting these results.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I just saw a meme yesterday that was like, genetics don't get you up at 5 a.m. to kick ass or something like that. And I think that's a really good motto because it's true. I mean, yeah, some guys might be in a better case than you. They might have better leverages. They might have a better, frame to put mass on and stuff. But it's just still no excuse because they're still working their asses off to get where they are. So, I mean, just imagine really great genetics and someone who doesn't work that hard, okay? Like, you might have to work harder than them to get where they are. But imagine you giving yourself 110% every time. You're eventually going to pass that guy out.
I knew a guy, the first time he ever deadlifted, he must have been 16, 17 years old. He got 405 raw. And this guy had no lifting experience. This guy had, like, the best genetics you could think of. And today, he's in his 20s, and he's still lifting around the same amount because he never put any effort. He just went in there, and he never set the bar high for himself. So this guy has a potential of being someone really great, but he just doesn't train hard enough, you know? That said, though, do you consider yourself to have good genetics, or are they just average, like realistically?
I'd say a little bit above average, to be honest with you. I just noticed, even when I was younger, when I was a little kid, I didn't really, of course, lift or anything yet. So we just played like games of pickup football, and I'd seem to be the kid that they'd be like, man, he's a beast, you know, before I even touched the weight. And then in baseball, too, I was pretty good. I was a pitcher. I was pretty dominant. And, you know, I just felt like, yeah, I just felt like a lot of people didn't really want to mess with me at the time when I was smaller. And I felt like I had somewhat of an edge on people. So I feel like a little bit of above average. But I think that as you mature, though, and become a teenager and hit puberty, things really change. Yeah. And, you know, there's some people out there that are little wimps, and then as soon as they hit puberty, they just grow 3 feet and, you know, gain 100 pounds and 80 pounds of its muscle. It's crazy. It's hard to say, but I'd say a little bit above average. Because I'd say I'm a little bit more, like, athletic as well. Like, I'm not just this big power lifter who can just lift heavy things as well.
Like you have pretty good conditioning and stuff?
Once again, I didn't really do that until I met Brandon with my training. He really kicked my ass with training and stuff. Like, he'd have me run a mile for time and, you know, run 2 miles and stuff.
Yeah. But, like, I'm sure it benefited your work capacity, you know? Like, you were able to push yourself harder in the gym and, you know. Yeah,
that was definitely his thing of it was, you know, we're going to build up your work capacity. We're even going to just everything the opposite of what everyone tells you for powerlifting is what everyone's gravitating towards now. Like, he's saying, like, shorter rest periods and stuff like that. Because he had me do, like, 1-minute rest periods for, like, the first 4 weeks of my training. So I did a 16-week train cycle with him. And then as the weeks went on, he maybe added 30 seconds of rest or something, which I definitely was not used to that. I'm used to taking, like, 3 to 5 minute breaks or so between sets.
Yeah. Well, I find that rest intervals is a really good way of humbling you and developing strength. Because a lot of guys, they're resting so long. Some dudes, they take 10 minutes of rest between their sets of squats. And next thing you know, 45 minutes pass, and they're still squatting. You know, I find it's ridiculous in many cases. And if people just lower the rest, and they work on their conditioning, and they build up that work capacity, the workouts are going to be a lot shorter and intense, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah. Because you're looking at guys that squat 800-900 pounds. Like, look at Ray Williams. Like, he'd be in the gym all day long if he took 10-minute rest periods.
Well, I feel like does he train like that though with the low rest?
See, I'm not even entirely sure.
Okay. When you're squatting amounts like that, even your sub-maximal weight is like extreme, you know. So I can imagine low rest must be it must be death, it must be hell.
Oh, hell yeah. But you'd imagine, too, they'd probably take some bigger jumps as well. Like, we're probably taking 40, 50-pound jumps between our squat sets, and they're probably taking 100, 120-pound jumps or something.
Yeah, you think they would jump that much? By 100, 200-pound jumps?
Maybe up until 60% or so, I'd say. Like, maybe they'll start with 225 and then maybe throw in 405 and...
Yeah. So, like, how about... on the topic of warming up, how exactly do you do it? Like for your bench press, so you want to build up to 300 pounds and do some rep work with that. How would you work up to it so that you're nice and strong and you don't get snapped up?
I'll warm up just enough. Like, I'm not that type of guy that's going to go in and do 10 rep sets the whole way up. I feel like you're not going to have energy for your top set. Yeah. So I'd say, like, the bar for anywhere between 12 and 20 reps just to get the blood moving a little bit. Maybe 135 for like a set of 8 or so, 185 for a set of 5, 225 for a triple, 275 for a single or double, and then maybe 300 then.
Okay, cool. So the way you're, because some guys I see them like they'll just do singles during the warm up, like even when it's really really light. But you're suggesting that you do like 135 for 8, 185 for 5, then the 225 for 3. Like you're gradually reducing it basically until you
Right.
hit that heavier weight instead of just doing singles all the way through.
Right. Exactly. The only way I could see me doing singles, like I've actually done this before for max attempts for on a deadlift, is I'll do singles all the way up then. So
Yeah.
like I'll do, like a plate up until maybe 405, and then I'll start adding 40 to 50 pounds a set until I get to my max set and just do singles, because I feel like there's just so many more warm-up sets involved.
Yeah. Well, with deadlifting, it's hell, man.
Yeah.
The building up process is like a huge event, and it takes so long. Like just the deadlifting part can take a lot of minutes, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like for the 655, how'd you build up to that?
So I think I might have done 135 for a set of 5 or so, 225 for a triple, and then singles the whole way. So like 315 for a single,
Yeah.
405 for a single, 495 for a single, and then I think I went like 550 or something, because I felt like if I went to 585, for some reason I felt like that would have tired me out too much for my very, very top set. Like I'm weird with deadlifts. Like I kind of have to take medium jumps and then take a large jump for my last one, my very heaviest set.
Okay. It's like because I pull behind the back, and I did 655 with that, and I find like the transition between 585 and 655 is like awkward, because you don't know how you're gonna jump it. Like it just feels strange. Like if you go into, it's like it's such like an in between amount that
Right.
if you go too heavy, it's like you feel like you're losing all your energy. You know, it's very strange. Like it's hard to explain.
Right. That's
You know what I
exactly
mean?
what yeah. Because it's like, because my 550 before the 665, I mean, it is like, it's a 115-pound jump, but it just felt like a gamble almost. Like 550 is enough to where like, okay, I might have 665, but at the same time, you're not lifting heavy enough to know if you're going to get it or not, so it's kind of like a gamble.
Yeah.
But once again, it's all off of feel. Like if you feel great and you feel like you could go all day long, maybe you could take the 585 jump and then maybe 665. But I say just always go by how your body feels.
Yeah. So, do you have any mindset techniques that you could share with the viewers? Like I know you mentioned the thinking about bad stuff, you know, but do you have any other methods that would allow one to push new barriers? You know.
Getting in that zone real crazy, but at the same time, you just really have to slow yourself down, because a lot of times, like when you're walking up to a bar for a deadlift or something, you feel like you're not really going that fast. You feel like, okay, let's just get this weight up, and you walk up to the bar, and then when you watch it on video, it's like 3 seconds of you like running up to the bar and just pulling, tugging on that. So I feel like slowing yourself down like 10 times in your head is a really comfortable pace, because it feels like it's taken forever for you to set up, but when you go back and watch the video, it's like, it's perfect. So I'd say to really take your time to set yourself up, think about what you're doing.
Okay, that's some good advice.
The last thing I want to talk about, and this is one of the main things I want to talk about, was with the grip strength,
Right.
with the rackles and stuff. The one thing and the one cue I have for everybody is everybody's thinking when they're going to grab the barbell, they're thinking squeeze that bar as hard as you possibly can before you lift the weight. And I don't think that's the best cue. I think the best cue is, yes, grip the bar, but as you're applying pressure to the ground, think more of you not letting the weight open up your hands.
Right.
I think if people think of that cue more than just gripping the bar, they'll definitely be better off. Because when you're thinking just gripping the bar as hard as you can, I feel like you almost like lose energy because you're gripping it. Like some guys like to, wait 10 seconds before a deadlift. Like they'll be like, and like get in their head, so they'll be gripping in advance to that. In which I think that it's just a better thing to just think of it not opening up your hand, because it's not the same thing as like pinch grips, like you're pinching weights, or you're doing these forearm exercises, because your hand is already closed around a fixed object. It's already closed around a bar. So the only thing you have to worry about is it not opening up your hand. Right. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's kind of, you're thinking, well, isn't that the same thing as gripping? But it really isn't, though. It's kind of like your resistant grip. Opposed to how hard can you squeeze, it's how much does it take to open up my hand. So kind of like, let's just say squatter A and squatter B. Squatter A could squat 550 and squatter B could squat 500. Now, if you put 600 pounds on a bar and you tell them do as slow of a negative as you can do, it doesn't necessarily mean the lifter A that could squat 550 could squat down slower in more control with that weight. It's a completely different thing. It's more of a resistant grip than gripping the bar. It's a completely different thing. And now, not saying like, now lifter A might be able to go down slower at 600, but it's not definite. So you can't just base your grip strength just off of pinching weights. Like, someone might be able to pinch 45s together with the smooth sides, and you might only be able to do 35s, but you still might be able to hold on to more weight with the barbell than them. And that's exactly why I say, if you want to increase your grip strength because you're failing deadlifts due to your grip, you should probably be working on the barbell itself rather than working on a pinch and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like that could help you, but it's not going to help you near as much as a barbell. It's a little bit more.
Yeah. So basically, we're going back to specificity, the general rule, Okay. And beyond that, do you have any advice for people who want to get into the sport of powerlifting? Like, what are some beginner tips for someone who's really considering it, and they want to get involved in the community? Like, do you have any resources that you could point them to? Do you have any beginner advice for guys attending their first meet, things of that nature?
I'll say, no matter where you live, you probably at least have one or two people in an area that powerlift. And most powerlifters, almost every powerlifter I've ever met, are really nice, down to earth, and they'll definitely help you out. So I'd say talk to one of them, ask them how you can compete. Also, just online, there's a bunch of different sites you could go to. Like, if you're looking to compete in USAPL, you can just Google it and, click on the site. Or if you live in Pennsylvania, there's a site called purepowerlifting.com, and you can find all the meets in Pennsylvania in the USAPL or IPF from there. So it's very easy. You have so much access because of the internet. So you could definitely find a meet in your area, and it'll definitely be easy. And like I said, powerlifting is a beautiful sport because just about everybody that you meet is amazing. So, like, you'll go to a powerlifting meet. Don't be shy to walk up to somebody. Somebody will help you out. They'll help you if you're a little bit nervous about the commands or something, or, you say, oh, I forgot my belt. Someone will probably let you borrow their belt even. It's really nice. It's a great community. So, yeah, there's definitely, it's all over. Like, and if you have access to the internet, you could definitely hop on there and find a meet close to you.
Okay, cool. I think that's good advice for people who want to get into it. And also, I want to end off by saying that I like the positivity that you bring to the sport. You give the sport a good name, and when people watch your stuff or they hear you speak, it's like they're more motivated to compete, Because there's some powerlifters who they have a negative mentality, and they kind of like look down on you, and they say things that demotivate people, So I think that when we bring it back to positivity, and you have a nice tight community of supportive individuals, I think that really helps grow the sport, And I'm happy that I got to talk to you today, and you shared your knowledge and wisdom regarding powerlifting parameters,
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it was a pleasure. Is there any last words that you'd like to share with the viewers?
No, I think we pretty much covered all bases. I just want to say once again about powerlifting and the sport. Like, if you're wanting to compete and you're like, oh man, I don't know, like, I'm just not strong enough. That's just nonsense, because as long as you can lift a 20-kilo bar, you can compete. And it's always a starting point. Don't be scared to just hop into powerlifting meet. If you see one 3 weeks out and you're like, well, I kind of want to do it, but I don't know. just go in there, even if you lift 20 pounds less than you ever did. It's always starting point. It's official. It's awesome. It's amazing. And also, don't be scared to do some odd lifts, kind of like me and Alex do with, the rack pulls, trap bar deadlift and stuff.
Right.
It's not always just squat, bench, and deadlift. You can always improve in some sort of way. Maybe it's not your cup of tea. Maybe you want to do trap bar deadlift. Maybe it feels better on your back or your knees. Go ahead and do it, man. It's for everybody. It's a camaraderie. So that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's about bettering yourself and coming together as a community.
I agree 100%, Tyler. So with that said, if people want to reach you, what would be the best way of doing so?
Well, if they want to reach me on YouTube, go to youtube.com/ I finally changed it since I had over 100 subscribers. Instead of having Yeager Powerlifter, just click on that. I'm sure you'll link that anyway. And Facebook, I have a Facebook fan page. I don't have a lot of fans on there yet, but hopefully I end up getting them. So it's going to be facebook.com/ TYYEAG92. And then also can follow me on Instagram at Tyler Yeager Powerlifter.
Excellent. All right, then. Well, I wish you the best of success, Tyler. I hope you make all the PRs in the world. I hope my subscribers come over to your channel and give you the love and support that you deserve. And with that said, I want to thank you once more for being here today and sharing your experiences about the sport. It's much appreciated.
Yep, dude, awesome. It was an honor, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, dude. So with that said, hope you guys enjoyed this collaboration segment. Let us know if you want more Tyler. And that's it. We'll talk to you next time.